Hi everyone, welcome. Today I'm going to be playing with a fabulous little set of cutting dies. This set is called Lemon Zest and it's going down as one of my favorites so far for 2022. It's just a small set, but it's also a layering set, and I'll show you what I mean by that in just a minute. I'll be making some mini slimline cards using these cutting dies. And for my last card, I'm actually going to be turning these into stamps, one of my favorite techniques. So let's get started with the first card. I have all of my pieces die cut. This is a 6 1/4 by 3 1/4 card base. It's made out of Barely Peach cardstock from Spellbinders. It's one of my favorite colors. It's just a very pale, pretty peach color. I want to add a little bit of color and dimension to my die cut pieces. I'm going to be doing some ink blending. I like to use this little piece of vinyl from my kit here, so I'll pull that out on the desk. And I also have some Kitsch Flamingo Distress Oxide ink. So I'm going to have pink lemons too. There's nothing cuter than lemons, but pink lemons, that just goes over the top. I love it. So we're going to add a little bit of a shadow on one side of these pink lemons. And these dies are etched dies, so you get a lot of fun details in all of these die cuts. For the yellow lemons, I'm going to add some dried marigold for the shading. And again, I'll just shade one side of the lemons. You could use a Copic marker or colored pencils or whatever you'd like to add a little bit of interest and shading to these pieces, but it goes really fast with your inks. For these yellow lemons, I'm going to pull out my Kitsch Flamingo one more time. Just add a little touch of pink to these as well on the other side. This was a really fun set to play with at the moment because we have a polar vortex going on here in Chicagoland, and it's like -5 degrees outside. So this was just fun to add some sunshine to my day. Look at this large leaf piece that you can die cut. I love this. And this is going to completely fill up my mini slimline card. So there's a slit in the lemons, and you can put the stem right into the lemons that way. Just using my all-in-one tool just to help me open up that little slit. This is basically what the card is going to look like. Isn't that just adorable? But I wanted to add a little more of the Kitsch Flamingo behind my lemons and the leaves. So just a touch of color. It adds a lot of fun interest to the card. I'm not worrying about getting a perfect blend because most of this is going to be covered up. But you will see a hint of this behind the lemons and the leaves. The kit comes with some little lemon buds or flowers, and I'm going to work on those next. But here is the basic layout of the card. So those leaves are the layering pieces, and I chose to cut them out with some teal cardstock. And here are the little flower buds. Let's glue the stems on top of those. These go a long way for adding some airiness and lightness to the card, because you have these heavy leaves and then the lemons, and then you needed just something smaller to put around them to break it up a little bit. So these are perfect for that. Before we attach this large leaf piece to the card, let's add the shadows to it. And each leaf comes with a coordinating die to cut out the shading. So the teal and the green just go beautifully together. It just gives it a cartoony, fun touch for this first card. You could pop these up with some foam pieces, but I'm just going to glue them down flat. So I forgot to mention that this little set is from the Be Bold collection that was just released from Spellbinders in January of 2022. They've had some really fun releases this month, and I have a few more products to show you, so there'll be more videos coming up very soon. So let's put these last two pieces on. For the mini slimlines that I usually create, the size is 3.5 by 6.5. But they don't fit very well in the mini slimline envelopes that I have, and I want to use them up. So that's why I made these a little bit smaller this time. Okay, so let's glue this large leaf piece flat down onto the card front. I'll just use little dabs of glue for this. I don't want it oozing between the slits on these leaves. And then for the lemons, I'm going to pop them up, give them just a little bit of dimension with some foam squares. I'm just going to put one foam square behind each lemon. I don't want to put it behind the dots because I don't want the white of the foam square showing through. And I'll do the same thing with the pink lemon, but I do want to glue the stem down so it doesn't shift in the mail. So I'll add little dots of glue behind that and tuck it under one of the leaves. I'll tuck the pink lemon behind the yellow lemon a little bit too. And then I can just pop a foam square behind the pink lemon to keep it in place. The lemon buds, I'm going to glue down flat as well. Just going to kind of tuck them in so it looks like they're attached to the main stem. The sentiment I'm going to use on this card comes from a previous card kit from Spellbinders. It probably came out, I'd say 3 years ago. I keep all of my stamps and dies from their card kits because they're fabulous. But this one was lemonade themed. And so the sentiment says hugs and squeezes. It's a little banner sentiment, and I'm going to stamp it up with some VersaFine Onyx Black ink onto a piece of pink cardstock. Then I'll just pull out my scissors and trim around that. I'll pop up the sentiment with some foam squares and place it up at the top of the card. And now for some more little flower buds. I'm adding dimension with my all-in-one tool. Has the little ball on the end that I can press it into the foam piece and make the leaves curl up. Then I can just glue those around the leaves on the front of my card. I'll pull out some crystal gems from Spellbinders and add them to the centers of these flowers. And then for one last touch, I pulled out my Arteza gel pen. I'm going to add lots of highlights to the lemons, as well as to the leaves. I'm going to add little kind of stitch marks along the teal cardstock on the leaves. And this just adds the cutest touch to this card. And here's a close-up look at the finished card. These die cuts are a nice large size, so you can fill up your A2 sized cards as well as your mini slimlines and your regular slimline cards. On card number 2, I cut out a panel using the Spellbinders large die of the month from last July, and it cuts out the cutest little dots around this mini slimline panel. This is just a piece of Nina Solar White 110-pound cardstock, and I'm going to blend on a little bit of this Prize Ribbon Distress Oxide ink. I want it to be darkest at the top and then just fade out to white. These lemon die cuts are going to look beautiful in front of this blue panel. So again, I already cut out all of my pieces. This is going to be a portrait orientation card, same size as the last one, 6 1/4 by 3 1/4. And this time I'm popping up the leaves with some foam pieces. So the lemons are going to hang down from the top of this card. This cardstock is called Fern, and it's from Spellbinders. The layering pieces I cut out with blue spruce. It's kind of a bluish green I'm putting on top for the layers. And I'll just glue them down flat again. I have a couple of sisters-in-law who live in California, and they both have lemon trees growing in their backyards. And wouldn't it just be a wonderful thing to be able to go out into your yard and pick your own fresh lemons? I'm kind of jealous of that. Let's add the last layer to this leaf and attach our lemons. The lemons are going to be popped up with some foam tape as well. This time I cut it out with yellow and even some gold foil cardstock, or I should say gold metallic cardstock. I'll attach the stems in this little slit again. Just looks more realistic this way. It's a nice detail. The gold lemon, I'm going to glue down flat, actually. And I'll remember to put some glue on the stem and just tuck it behind this first leaf here. It needed a little more yellow up at the top of this card, so I'm going to attach a lemon at the very top. And I will glue this down flat. And then I'm just going to snip off the overhang. It just adds a very fun and needed touch of color at the top of the card. So now let's add the little lemon buds. And these will be glued down flat. And then one more. I'll add a third bud right in the center of these leaves. And this time I didn't curl up the leaves. I'm just going to glue that down flat. The sentiment comes from the Smooth Lines Mix and Match Sentiments. That was just released this month as well. I'm just going to use the sentiment that says love. And again, I cut it out with gold metallic cardstock. This cardstock does take a little bit longer to dry just because it is metallic. And then I can add this to my white card base. I'll attach it with some liquid glue. You'll be able to see the white of the card base from behind this top panel because of the little holes in the die cut panel. And the last thing I'm going to do is to add more gems. These are called Aura, and they're new to the Spellbinders shop. These add a cute touch of yellow to this card. And I'm going to add one in the center of my little flower bud, and then just a few around the lemons and the leaves. And here is a close-up look at the finished card. I love the yellow and the blue and the white together. It just looks so fresh and pretty. So for card number 3, I promised I would show you how to turn your die cuts into stamps. I went ahead and cut all of them out off camera, and this time I cut them out with some fun foam. Spellbinders has this in their shop, or you can just pick it up at your local craft store. I'm going to use some dot liner on these die cuts and attach them to one of my acrylic blocks. I only have 3 acrylic blocks in my stash, so I have to make this one fit. It fits just barely on this round block here. But these make the perfect stamps. So this card's going to be a landscape card, and I'm going to stamp out the leaves with some cracked pistachio distress oxide ink. Using white fun foam is nice because you can really tell when you have enough ink on your stamp. I'm going to get it nice and inky. And I'm going to be stamping onto a piece of Neenah Solar White cardstock. This is the 110 pound. And just look at all of the details you get from these fun foam stamps. You even see the little slits in the leaves. Isn't that just beautiful? But they work just great as stamps, and it's a really easy technique to do. It's a fun way to stretch your cutting dies as well. So let's stamp it again. This card panel is just going to be a little bit smaller than my mini slimline card base. And you can even alter your stamps by cutting off some of the leaves or the stems that you don't want. There we go. I cut out all of the layers to these leaves as well, and the stems. So let's put a little bit of dot liner behind this stem and attach it to another acrylic block. I'll ink it up again with the cracked pistachio. I'm just going to stamp out some of the stems for my lemons. I'm going to use this little piece of scrap paper kind of as a mask, so you don't see this line going over the leaves. Okay, now for the layers. This makes just a wonderful layering stamp set. So I'm using evergreen bough for the shadow layers. And it just looks so pretty with the cracked pistachio. This card ends up looking very painterly and fun. You could create a lot of cards really fast with this technique. So let's keep adding our shadow layers. This is going to be a single layer card, but you could stamp all of these out separately and then cut them out, fussy cut them out, and layer them up that way. This one ends up being my favorite card, just because I had so much fun with it, and I love the results of this one. My acrylic blocks do end up getting pretty inky and sticky from the dot liner, but I was able to easily clean those off. I used a little bit of Nova's Fine Scratch Remover. I'll link that below. It works great on acrylic blocks to get them good and shiny again. Okay, so let's stamp out the lemons. And as you can see, the stem was just a little bit too long for this, but I'm going to fix that. I debated whether I should start over, but I wanted just to carry on and see if I couldn't fix that. I'll stamp out the lemon one more time, just using some worn lipstick for the shadow, and I have to look over the block so that I can line it up perfectly. But this just adds the cutest touch of shading to that lemon. Don't you love it? Let's add another lemon attached to the second stem. And we'll do the same thing. I'm going to ink it up again with the worn lipstick, just on one side, and then stamp over it again. And again, if you don't want to stamp it twice, you can come in with some colored pencils to add some cute pink shading to it. So I'm going to stamp out the flower buds next. I'll stamp them out with more of the worn lipstick. But look at the details of those foam stamps. They're just fabulous. So let's stamp out some stems for these so they don't look like they're just floating there in space. After creating this card, I decided I needed a few more acrylic blocks in my stash. I've just had these 3 for the longest time. Again, I'll stamp out the stems with some cracked pistachio. And I'm going right over the pink of the bud. I'll use my little scrap piece again to mask out this next stem. And then we'll do this again for the third bud. These inks layer up beautifully though. But I just want it to look like it is going behind the leaves on this one. Okay, so to fix the green stems on the lemons, I'm going to use the flower stamp and just make it look like it was purposeful that I put those stems there. So we'll add a little bit of dot liner behind the flower and ink it up again with the worn lipstick. This just fixes it perfectly. We'll add a flower on both of them. You could even darken the green stem if you wanted to, but but I liked it just the way it is. I really liked the look of this flower stamp, so I'm going to ink it up a few more times and stamp around this panel. It just needed a little something more around these leaves. We'll stamp one more coming off of the panel, and then one more at the top right corner. Isn't that pretty? So painterly looking. I love it. Okay, so let's attach this to a pink card panel. I tried to find a pink cardstock from my stash that matched the worn lipstick, and I think this matches pretty well. Attach the pink to the card base first, and there's just going to be a very thin border around the main panel. And then it was at this point that I remembered I didn't add a sentiment yet. I got too excited about stamping out all of these cutting dies. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm using the Smooth Lines Mix and Match sentiments. I'll use dot liner to attach it to my acrylic block. There was so much dot liner on that acrylic block that I didn't need much more. And then I'm going to stamp it out with some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And this looks very painterly too, but I liked the look of it. It looks a little bit wonky, but it's cute. So I'm going to stamp it at the bottom of this card where there's an open space for it. I'm just going to wipe off the acrylic block so I don't get black ink where I don't want it to be. And then I'm not pressing down very hard, it's just gentle. And I rocked the acrylic block just a little bit. Okay, so for a touch of sparkle, I'm going to add some more of the gems. And again, this one is the Aura. They have a yellowy tinge to it. I'm just going to add 3 of these around this panel. So I hope you guys give this technique a try. It was so much fun to do. And if you want to check out the Lemon Zest cutting dies from Spellbinders, I'll have it linked below as well. Here's a close-up look at this finished card. You can reuse your stamps several times if you want to as well. Thanks for spending some of your time with me today. I hope that you were inspired. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever tried this technique before, and if not, are you going to give it a try? As I said before, it's a really fun way to stretch your cutting dies. Take care, my crafty friends. Until next time, bye.